welcome to Tailgate Talk. It's Ritter and Tasker Wags out this week as they're wrapping up baseball season. We'll get in touch with him. I know he visited our friends over at Buck Rub Archery, who's a big sponsor of the show, and got him set up with a little crossbow action this week, which I'm sure he's going to want to talk about coming up as we go forward. I know we're going to touch a lot of things into bow hunting and deer hunting, which I can see our Tasker's face as he's mobile today. Very excited about that because you did a card pull, and I know we're going to try and get into what you found coming up here soon.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. I mean, I knew that we all had guesses as we were going up. I was going back and forth with my dad. You know, how many bears do we think we're going to see? Coyotes, wolves, whatever. It far exceeded our expectation, and we thought we were really on the high end. So, I don't know. I just tried to set everything as far apart as possible so I'd have as much delay in between pictures so I didn't get a bunch of duplicates. But, I don't know. It was crazy to see how many times there was a deer that would just hang around for 40 minutes, and then you've got 75 pictures of the thing, So, and I talked to Wags this morning, actually. He was at Fleet Farm, and he's like, does it matter what kind of lime I buy? I'm like, just go to the home and garden department, and whatever is there, you'll be fine.
Wags has always got so many questions.
Because it's supposed to rain like tomorrow, I think, and then we're going to be dry for a couple days. So he's all panicked. He's got everything planted, but he wants to run some lime through the food plot as well. And so he's like in total panic mode to try and get things done before the rain comes. So
a lot of people are there. It's kind of the last ditch effort to get those fall food plots in right now. So we'll touch base more on that. I know you and I, we've actually got a big trip coming up next weekend. We're headed off to Canada. Finally, we're going to take 11 people, 12 people, whatever that all are part of the show, can go along with us and do some fishing on Lake of the Woods and slay the smallmouth, catch the easy walleyes, and maybe the occasional muskie.
Yeah, I can't wait. I mean, we got together this week to get our plan together. And I mean, you know me, I don't care what's biting. I'm happy to catch anything. So I'm looking forward to it, though. I've heard about it, and I've worked with ballards for a couple years now. And, to finally be able to go on the trip is super exciting. And, I mean, you hear so much about Lake of the Woods, that it's just this beautiful, beautiful area. And 2 years without tourism, so we're really hoping to have a ton of memories first and foremost, but to be able to catch some good fish, that'll be a lot of fun.
You were getting kind of crazy and excited about some of the pictures of the muskies I was sending that I've caught up there in the years past. That's one thing. How about catching a salmon in a kayak? What do you think, Tasker?
Yeah, I feel like you're going for a sleigh ride, right? I mean, especially when you catch a nice sized one like our guest today has. So
yeah, it's great. Leads perfectly right into it. Nick Van Gompel, who is the winner of this year's Salmon-a-rama. And if you're not familiar with this event, it's a big salmon tournament that's put on out of, I believe it's Racine. I think it's like the Reef Point Marina where it is. And it lasts just over a week. And people, whether they're on charter boats, in their own boats, in kayaks from shore, they can all buy tickets and participate in this giant salmon tournament. So it's salmon, trout, everything. And it's all based on weight of the fish. Now, what's kind of interesting to me is that you can be in a kayak and register your fish as a boat if you have a boater ticket. So they have different tickets, basically. And that's exactly what our guest, Nick, did. Being the winner from a kayak, first off, you've got to explain a little bit about when you caught the fish. Tell the story a bit, because to me, I can't think of catching a 35-pound fish from a kayak.
Yeah, of course. First of all, thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it. So the Salmon-a-rama tournament, it's an 8-day-long time tournament. It's run out of Racine, Wisconsin. So the Salmon United chapter of Wisconsin puts it on, and they do a great job with everything. There's a ton of work that goes into it. So certainly appreciate everything they do. It is a bit of a ride, or it can be a bit of a ride. This example, as big as this fish was, really didn't pull me around a whole lot. I think I stayed within about 100, maybe 150 feet of where I hooked it to where I landed it, which is kind of shocking because I've caught 12-pounders that have pulled me hundreds of yards. And this one spun me in a circle and stopped right there. So I think I got pretty lucky. In fact, I know I got lucky because the fish had every opportunity to get away during that morning. For those who haven't heard, at Salmon-a-rama, I kind of summarized what happened, but it was a Tuesday morning before work, and I just ran out during that tournament. It was a nice morning to be out. I was only in 70 feet of water, so where I was fishing out by Port Washington, that's really not that far out. You only have to go maybe 1.5 miles, maybe 2 miles at the farthest to get to that deeper water. Running 2 flasher flies on my kayak. I got 2 rod holders up front, and then I got 1 out the back. So I can run 3 lines. It can get a little messy sometimes if you get spun around. But
I was going to ask you that. It's got to be kind of a bit of a cluster is the word we use for it. If you get, one on and other lines that are in the water, and then, like, God forbid the situation where you double up, where you can't pull a line fast enough while you're trying to fight one. I mean, that's got to be quite an experience.
Yeah, I've been doubled up. It's more common in the springtime with the cohos because you go through a big school of them. But I have been doubled up on kings a few different times. It is chaotic. So
that'd be total panic for me, for
Tasker,
sure.
Tasker's very familiar with chaotic things. He lives in chaos.
You gotta hope that they all swim different directions. Like the two fish that hooked aren't friends, and they just go their separate ways and kind of keep all the lines clear from one another. But thankfully that morning on that Tuesday, I didn't have to worry about it. It's just this one fish. It was the only bite I had. It peeled off, 250 feet of line right away. So I knew I had a king on, but everything, mid-teens all the way up to 25 are going to take out 250 feet of line right away. So I didn't know how big it was. It kind of came back at me as fast as I can pick the line back up on the reel. I was trying to do that to catch up to it, had some slack in the line. And then the wind spun me in a circle. So in a kayak, it's a little challenging sometimes to keep going the same direction all the time. It's not as easy as a boat where, the steering wheel stays pretty stationary. So I got spun around. All three of my lines got twisted up, and the line went slack. And I thought, oh, great. Par for the course this year so far. I set the rod down on the deck of the kayak, and I actually cleared my other two lines. So this line with the fish on it, completely slack. And it just sat there for probably 2 or 3 minutes while I cleared my other two rods. So right there, super lucky. That fish should have been gone because I've already done a lot wrong. And this fish was still there. I picked that rod back up, started winding, and to my surprise, the weight was still there. I was utterly shocked. I didn't know how big it was at this point. Still didn't know how big it was. I brought it up. I finally had the flasher come out of the water. So now I'm looking 2 or 3 feet behind the flasher, and that's the first time I saw this fish. And it literally looked like a shark chasing my flasher through the water. All I saw was its back and its tail, and I thought, holy smokes, look how big that thing is. And
yeah,
you can finally now see how wide its back was between the waves. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is quite a fish. Got my net out, scooped it up, and kind of goes into the net and kind of started sliding back out a little bit. So I set the rod down again, grabbed it by the tail, and just shoved it into the net as far as I could get it in. Picked it up over the side of the kayak, and as I picked it up, the net bent, and then it broke and fell right at my feet. So I got the handle in one hand, I got the net and the fish laying on top of my feet by my pedals, and sat there for probably 5 minutes, took a picture, sent it to my wife, and I'm like, I think I got a good one here. So it was really tough to judge how big a fish is when you're sitting in a kayak and bouncing around. I knew it was big. I knew it was going to be about 25, hopefully maybe 30. Threw it in the cooler, loaded up. There was actually another kayak angler on shore. He helped me push my kayak up, and he probably thought I was super weak, but it's because I had an extra 35 pounds of cargo up front. So
right, yeah, you forget how much that can actually change. The weight distribution, and you like you said, put weight up front. It can make it really hard to pick that front up, move it anywhere. Yeah,
definitely. So got in the cooler, got home, threw some batteries back in my fish scale, which they were dead since I hadn't used it since last year. Picked the fish up and thought, well, that can't possibly be right. That scale's got to be off. So I ran back inside and I got my bathroom scale, which is super official.
Yeah, how did your wife feel about that?
At this point, she was standing out there wondering what I was doing, I think.
So did you just put the fish on the scale, or did you do it like we do with the dogs, where we stand on it, we get our weight, and then we pick the dogs up and jump back on the scale?
Exactly what I did. So stepped on it, stepped off, picked the fish up, stood back on it. I was like, holy smokes, my fish scale is actually right. That thing is definitely pushing 35.
Yeah, glad you mentioned the Tasker, because I was thinking I would have just laid the fish on the scale. That's why I was like, my wife and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, we need to talk about where you put dead animals again.
Well, I would just think that the scale would be too small. So the front and the back of the fish would be off the scale and you wouldn't get an accurate measurement. You almost have to do it that way, where you step on it, step off, grab the fish.
You are the brains of the operation here, man.
Yeah, the best thing you can probably pick, if you're going to do those kind of competitive things, those fish scales, an accurate one's not more than $35-$40. So nice little tool to have available.
So how did you get into salmon fishing as a whole? Because I gotta imagine that you got into it first before you started getting into it in a kayak, because it's kind of a newer thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've gone out in a boat, several times. I grew up fishing. I grew up in the Fox Valley area near Appleton. So trolling for walleyes. We've done all of that, and we had the setup to go out in Lake Michigan. But when I got done with school, I didn't have money for a truck or a boat, much less both at the same time. So I bought a kayak, and I knew that that's something I can throw on top of the car that I had at that time, and I can go wherever I want to go. And I bought it specifically for Lake Michigan. And I lived at that point in Manitowoc. So I was fishing out of there a lot. And there was the Great Lakes Kayak Fishing Series goes there every fall in the early part of September, and they have a salmon tournament. I thought, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be here fishing anyway. I'll fish that tournament. So I fished that one. That was my first experience. I think that was in like 2014 or 2015. After that, they have that series had a bunch of bass tournaments and pike tournaments and all kinds of stuff. So I kind of started fishing with that group around that time, and that's how I got into more of the bass fishing side of things as well. But that's how it all started for me. Was I got that kayak specifically so I can go fishing more on Lake Michigan.
That's I mentioned kind of a new thing. Exactly what you said is in where kayak fishing to me, I really got involved with. I spent so many years being co-angler and doing that stuff. And, I actually used to run on charter boats in Lake Michigan. So I, know a lot about the salmon fishing side of things. I've just never thought of actually salmon fishing from my kayak. I was always about the bass fishing, but I think it's so much more affordable and so many more people can do it. And that's why, I'm
Absolutely.
a big proponent of saying, I think it's kind of the future and it's the next big thing. But, then seeing people like you be successful fishing for things like salmon in kayaks. I mean, I fished on the Pacific Ocean in a kayak, but I knew that was a little extreme, to most people. But I feel like it's becoming far more common, especially living in the Great Lakes area, to find people like you that are like, no, specifically, I want to fish salmon. This is how I can do it more affordably than having to, buy this giant boat and all the gas that goes with it, or constantly paying for, charter captains.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only disadvantage you really have from a kayak is, one, you can't go quite as fast. So you got to keep that in mind. But that's actually also an advantage, because as you're heading out, if you see that temp break from 56 to 53, there's going to be bait there. You'll mark it on your graph. So you have that advantage over some of the boats that are going to buzz right by it, because they already have in their mind, I'm going to 150 feet and that's where I'm setting up. They're going to miss a lot of that stuff. You get a little physically tired as well. So that's the other disadvantage. Now, a lot of guys that are new to it, I would strongly encourage you to, start small, be smart about it, watch the weather, make sure you go out on calm days. You got to have the right equipment for it as well. You can't go out there in a Sun Dolphin and expect to be successful going out 3 miles. You can do that, but to be ready to call the Coast Guard, because you're probably going to need help getting back to shore.
Yeah.
No doubt. Now,
I mean, we felt that way, and we were just out on a lake in Washington County, so we weren't really sure what was going to happen, but that was just because of other boats and things like that were in the area, the pleasure boaters. But yeah, it's something you got to take into consideration. So when you said that you bought your kayak specifically to fish Lake Michigan, what were some of the things that you were thinking about? Was it size? Was it width? Was it, having the tri-hull design? I mean, What were some of those things that you thought about?
So I definitely wanted one that I control from. So for me, it automatically had to have foot pedals. At that time, Hobie was coming out. They had that fishing pro angler platform. That's what I went with. It was at the time the biggest and the widest. That's what I wanted. Bigger and the wider, the more stable it's going to be. And it does have that tri-hull design. So you do get a lot of buoyancy leaning side to side. So you have some forgiveness, from a stability standpoint. Also, you got to watch the weather. So not only did I buy that, I set up with rod holders and stuff, but I also bought weather apps, a couple of them. Make sure you get familiar with watching the online resources for the buoys, because they mark currents, they mark temperatures, wave height, winds, everything comes from those. And it's a really valuable resource that we can tap into.
Yeah, for so many other things. I mean, we used to use it all the time just in duck hunting on the Great Lakes. Using those buoys was such a great thing to figure out what you could do or couldn't do also.
Yeah, and the other thing is some of them, I think the Atwater buoy specifically has measurements every 3 feet down to the bottom. So if you want to figure out where the temp break is, that is a great resource. You don't need to have your fish hawk to drop down to the bottom to find out. It's a great way to double check it, but you can use that as a good litmus test going forward and kind of get a pretty accurate approximation of where you should be targeting.
Oh, that's a great tip. I appreciate it. It's Ritter and Tasker, joined by Nick Van Gompel, winner of the Salmon-a-rama, the big tournament out of Racine each and every year. And what's most impressive of what Nick did is he caught a 35-pound king from a kayak. And I talk about all the time in the show how I think that kayak fishing is kind of becoming the next big thing, really. It's so much more accessible. Now, when it comes to fishing on Lake Michigan, though, we mentioned, it takes a little bit more of stuff. What other kind of like safety stuff would someone need if they want to get out on the big water, Nick?
The first thing is making sure that you're very visible. You're a blip on the radar out there. You're very small, you're tight, you're low to the water. Those big boats are gonna have a real tough time seeing you. So anything you can do to make yourself more visible is essential. So the flag, if you're gonna be out in the dark, make sure it's got a light. And there's a lot of great ones out there. Yak Attack makes one. You can also just buy a boat anchor light with the connection in the back like you would have for a regular boat. Put that out there. A lot of guys are running motors now, so if you got a trolling motor, you got to have your red and your green to make sure you're Coast Guard compliant. A flag, bright colors, lots of lights. So that's what I would recommend for those guys that are going out in the dark. Other safety things, obviously a PFD is essential. And if you're going to plan to be out there in the springtime, I would strongly encourage getting a dry suit as well. They're not comfortable. They got rubber gaskets around your neck, but it could save your life. So making sure you're safe, make sure you got the right equipment for stuff like that is going to be key.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many questions with it. And there was actually another guy that's been trying to drag me out to get out on Lake Michigan. Like, I just, time, not ready. And, so like you always talk about fall. I still like to fish bass in the fall because it can be so good still through the fall.
It is, yeah.
Are you more of a spring, fall, summer? Do you like fish year round? Are you out in the winter as well on Lake Michigan, or do you kind of just stick to the warmer months?
I tend to fish more in the summer, but I'll go out in the spring all the way through the fall. Spring is great. If you want to get the coho, they're pretty close to shore. Then in the summer, things they move out deep, so that's where you gotta be a little bit better conditioned. So I wouldn't just, wake up on a Tuesday morning and go out 11 miles. You're going to be in rough shape come Wednesday. So make sure you condition yourself for those longer runs. In the fall is a great time to go out as well. So some of you guys are avid walleye fishermen. You got all the stuff set up for walleye, or even if you have bass rods with some 20-pound test line on it, that's really all you need. In the fall, the kings are coming in to spawn, and then they're going to die. They have a 3 to 4 year life cycle. They don't live beyond that. They're technically invasive. They're stocked there to get rid of alewives. So they're going to be ending their life anyway. So that's a great time to get out and try it. You don't need fancy stuff. I flatline cranks is what I do in the fall. Flicker shads, I think you can get them a 3-pack for $12 from Fleet Farm.
The standard walleye go-to there, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Upgrade your hooks because they will get bent out and look like a spear if you don't. So make sure you upgrade those hooks. But that's the only recommendation I got. Otherwise, those flicker shads and flicker minnows are great. The most annoying colors you can get, the better. So I think I saw it.
Do you run your stuff on Dipsy divers? Do you run on planer boards, or are you just like straight flatline period?
I'll just flatline in the fall. It's all you need. You only have to sometimes get down 10, 12 feet. In the fall, they're not eating because they're hungry. They're eating because you annoyed them. So pick those bright pink ones, those yellow, orange lures. That's what's going to upset them. They're going to see that thing go by. They're going to hear the rattles, and they're going to want to kill it. So Fleet Farm, I think I just saw they had like a 3-pack. It was like a neon green, a neon yellow, and a neon orange. Those are probably going to be the hottest colors this fall. So buy that 3-pack. It's $14, $15. Put all of them on and just pull them around the harbors. You're going to have a great time.
That sounds good. So you mentioned Manitowoc in the Great Lakes Kayak Series Salmon event. That's actually still coming up here sometime. Was that September?
Yeah, it's going to be September. We pushed it back a week from our normal time. We're doing the state championship with other series in the state here for bass, and that's going to be on Green Lake the weekend of the 10th and the 11th. But that following week, for those guys that want to get out and try that salmon fishing from a kayak, we're going to be in Manitowoc on the 17th. So that will be our salmon derby day out there. It's a great time. So if you've never done it, again, you don't need fancy equipment, but if you want to see how other guys have their rigs set up, what a great opportunity. You could probably see 30 other boats set up that day and see what works well. You can talk to guys and find out what they've tried in the past that doesn't work. Just a great way to get ideas to build your kayak the way you want it to be built.
That's one of the great things I see all the time about kayak fishing is so much of it is customizable. it's all about building to your, what you need. And there's so much DIY in it, just building your own stuff. That's fun.
Yeah. I can't tell you how much PVC is kayak fisherman's friend. I got a rod rack made out of it. I got a cart made out of it. You can get as creative as you want. It's like Legos for adults.
My 360 light and flag is built out of PVC. My camera boom's all built out of PVC. Yeah, you're right. It is probably the greatest thing to have on your kayak, period.
Yeah, and it's super cheap. So if you're not sure what you want, go ahead and just try it. If it doesn't work out, it's $5 down the drain. So
yeah. I think that would be really cool just to get out there and see what everybody else's setups are. Because, I've got a kayak, but mine is like so bare bones. And I finally put electronics on it this year. And, I don't need a whole lot. I'm not the guy that's going to bring a bunch of different rods out there. And even just seeing some of the stuff that Ritter's had set up this year and, his battery box that he built and everything. It's just cool just to see what everybody else is doing because there's an unlimited number of options and ways to go about it, and it's just it just depends on what works for you and what you actually need. And sometimes you just see some really cool stuff. Ritter, I keep telling him, I'm like, that battery box that you built is something you could mass produce and make money and make a side hustle.
My wife's trying to talk me into it. She's like, you need to just you need to like buy all the stuff, build a couple of them, like we'll such an Etsy store or something. But yeah, I think there was a lot of thought and engineering that went into it, but I'm so glad I did because yeah, it's to me the ultimate. She like we'll be in the backyard and she's like, hey, can you go get your tackle crate for me? Because like her phone's dead and she just wants to be able to plug her phone in and charge it just sitting in the middle of the patio. So there's so many more uses other than just fishing for that entire box that I've built.
And that's where you get those ideas, just seeing what other people are doing and, either seeing stuff on Instagram or, wherever it might be, but, actually going and seeing these guys that have put a lot of time and effort in. I think just for that alone, it would be cool just to check that out.
Now, do you run a motor on yours at all, Nick, or are you straight pedal the whole time?
I'm all pedaling, so no motor on mine. I know a lot of guys that have it. Sometimes I am jealous of it because when you're out 3 miles and you want to get back, and you're already tired, it looks like a great advantage to have right then. But I've never put one on my kayak.
Yeah, I've always thought that getting into kayak fishing, the exercise was the part of it that was most attractive. But yeah, like you said, I've done that 2 mile run and you're halfway through it going, man, I should maybe just throw like a little trolling motor on here just for these scenarios.
Yeah, there's definitely a time and place for it. But, it's just more stuff. Over the years, at least personally, I have found that less is more. So I used to be the guy that went out there salmon fishing with 5 or 6 rods. It's like, you can only use 3 at a time maximum. Why do I have all this extra what-if equipment with me? So I started leaving more and more stuff behind. And in doing so, you kind of get more specific and dialed into what you want to do and kind of figure out what works best. But, for me, less is more and started leaving some of that equipment behind. And it's a lot easier to load and unload. Don't have to spend as much time. You got more free space. So it just works out better for me. But you got to find your own rhythm.
They mentioned cooler as far as transporting fish when you're salmon fishing on the Great Lakes. Is it something like in your rear tank well, or do you have something mounted on the front of your kayak? There's, again, like you talk about different ways that people can set up their kayaks.
So the front of my Hobie PA has that, the 14 has a pretty big well up front. I took out the liner and actually insulated the liner with like AC ductwork type of insulation. It's like a plastic bubble wrap, basically. So I just taped a couple layers of that around, and it will hold ice for a few hours. So I use that as my on-water ice well when I keep the fish cold. And then when I get back to the truck, if I need to transport, like during Salmon-a-rama tournament, I got a big like igloo 120 quart cooler. So I'll just throw it in that. And that's usually big enough for anything it'll fit a 35 pounder at least. So that's all that counted this year.
Which is probably more than what most people need to be prepared for. So,
yeah, don't go out there with the expectation you're going to pull in a 30 pounder. There was guys that have been fishing Lake Michigan for decades, and they have never pulled in a 30 pounder. So I got super lucky. Before that, my biggest one was 28. So.
I'd say 28 3/4 was the biggest ever boated on a boat that I was on or a part of, and that was during the Kewanee Door Salmon Derby back in I can't even think of what year it was, probably 2009 or something. That's the biggest I've seen. So, like I said, when I saw 35 pounds from him, like, that's impressive. And even more impressive that, like, I keep thinking of all the guys that were in, like, their big boats or on charter boats that entered into this tournament, and they got whooped by a guy in a kayak.
Well, the fish don't care what's pulling the lure. So, in their defense, their wives should definitely all let them go out fishing still. It's not that I whooped up on them. It's just I got luckier than them. So.
So not only did you win overall, but you also then registered and took second place in the kayak division for a second fish that was what, 20 some odd pounds too?
Yeah, it was 20. So that was probably the most memorable day I've had on Lake Michigan. I only had 2 bites. One was that 35 pounder, and then I went back out that night. Same spot. There suddenly was a lot more boats than there's ever been in that area. So word traveled pretty quick that was the area to be in. But I hooked into a 22 pounder that night, which bumped me or put me into second place and bumped Mark Rasmussen from first down to second. Mark is perpetually always at the top of the leaderboard of this tournament as well. So after day one, I think he had like a 21 pounder, 21 and change. And I think there was 0 people surprised to see him at the top of the leaderboard after one day. So my fish held, I think, until like that Friday or Saturday. And then Cal Sable came through and he put up a 25 pounder, I think.
Yeah,
so
24.48. I'm looking at it right now. Still, that's amazing. So,
yeah, another great. He's been out there for years as well. He's very experienced and great angler as well. So there's a lot of really nice guys out there in the kayak division. We're all pretty good friends. We all know of each other. And there's some really good sticks out there. So don't let the plastic boat fool you. We know just as much as some of those guys that are running 10, 15 rods on their big, 27-foot boats.
I mean, that's totally true. And you look at, the competitive world of kayak fishing, some of the biggest and best bass anglers there. There's some real sticks. Don't underestimate just because they're in a kayak. They couldn't, do the same thing that someone in a big bass boat could do. But, as I look at the results of Salmon-a-rama, what I thought was interesting to look at, a lot of the fish that were on the top were actually caught down here in the southern part of the state. Traditionally, to me, bigger fish have always been Sturgeon Bay, Bailey's Harbor. So it's kind of cool to see Port Washington, Racine actually coming through with some of the biggest fish. Yeah,
I think Port Washington gets a lot of attention and pressure just because that deeper water is close, and that's why it's advantageous for kayak anglers. But yeah, if you look at the KD tournament that ran the week after Salmon-a-rama, I think you needed 25 pounds just to be in the top 50. Mm-hmm. So there are consistently bigger fish being caught up there. But yeah, there's some big ones down south, especially if you get down that Racine area down there by Kenosha. You're going to pull in some lake trout. I don't know why they have like muddy bottoms, so the lake trout just love that. But yeah, there are some giant lake trout swimming around down there.
The biggest lake trout I've ever seen caught, actually, we were on a charter out of Milwaukee back a couple of years ago, my wife and some of her family. I didn't even weigh it, how big the lake trout was, but I was like, that is an impressively huge lake trout. And I've caught some big ones out, Kewaunee area, Algoma in front of the power plant there in Kewaunee is always another great spot for Lakers. But I was just impressed with how big they were down here. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, and they look goofy when they get like above 20 pounds. They start taking on weird characteristics and they just look funny.
You're like, is this some sort of weird hybrid of something? Nope, that's just straight up a lake trout. Well, hey, we're glad you popped in with us, and chatted a bit. We wanted to draw some attention to, now that you're accomplishing what you did, how cool that is. But, on this show, we talk about all outdoor things, whether it's hunting, camping, conservation issues, fishing. Me being from a fishing side talks a little bit more fishing, but specifically salmon fishing is kind of the one thing that doesn't, I think, get as much attention, with us. And I think with anyone in general, because it's almost even more niched than musky fishing. And so really want to draw the spotlight on it because your story to me just, tells people that, like, again, this is accessible. This isn't something you just have to have a giant boat that, only people with hundreds of thousands of dollars can afford to do. Anyone really can do it, with some smarts and some other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully, me winning this encourages other people that were kind of on the fence to really get out there and explore it and challenge themselves and get out there and see what they can catch, because it is a lot of fun. You don't need a ton of fancy equipment to get it done.
The one thing I was waiting to hear about is if this was your PB or not. And
oh yeah, by 6 pounds.
Yeah, that's just so amazing. It's always so cool just to have that experience, because you just never know when it's going to happen. That's what I love about fishing, is that you never know what's on the other end, and it's just always fun just to see what ends up happening. It's just that's really cool.
So this one will end up on the wall because it may be years. I may never get one this big again. So got to take advantage of that.
All right. So replica or actual fish?
I went with a replica.
Okay.
Some good solid recommendations. A lot of great, taxidermy artists around. But I went with a really reputable one, Tom Wendell. So really looking forward to seeing what he comes back with, and it should be really quick turnaround. So he said sometime in September he would expect to have that ready already. So that's awesome.
I'm a big proponent of pushing replicas. I just feel an actual fish mount, it all comes down to the artwork and the paint work by the taxidermist anyway. So why not just go with the replica if it's all about the paint anyway? And like you said, quick turnaround, it's a lot easier to take a body and paint it than all of the other process that goes into, working on mounting a fish.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're going to be mounting something out of Lake Michigan, those fish just have more oils in them. So even if you do the best job preserving it, over time it's going to yellow and you're going to get some spots with it. But replica, you never have to worry about that. It's going to look pristine from day one until the day you're done looking at it.
Yeah. Yeah, we've talked about that a couple of times, doing replica versus the actual fish. And I only have one fish mounted. I caught a 31.5-inch walleye on Lake Erie, and it was like 9.5 pounds. I mean, it was the most wonderful fish that I've ever caught. And I have it mounted, and it's sitting in the back room here. And I had no idea. I was just so inexperienced about the whole thing that I was like, a replica? I want this fish. I mean, I don't know what you guys are talking about. And I kind of wish that I would have done that because I could have put it back in. But it wasn't a fish that we were going to eat. I mean, once you get up to that size anyways, I'm not sure that that's going to be the best eating. But I'll be curious now that is my first actual mount. It's been 3 years now. I want to say we got it back in kind of October timeframe. So we're coming up on 3 years and it still looks great. I'm just curious, what does it actually look like in 10 years or 15 years? And so I don't know. That's cool, man. I definitely think that's the way to go because you'll never have to worry about discoloration or anything. So,
Yeah.
Or bumping it and breaking having fins look broken in a weird way. And yeah, I still, you just mentioned, I regret that 6-pound smallmouth from Little Sturgeon Bay when I was 18 years old. Knowing more now, that fish definitely was going back. But at the time, I was like, 6-pounder, this is huge,
Yeah. Yeah. I was terrified to open the box, though, because it was coming from Ohio, and they did a great job of wrapping it and packaging it. That's all that this place does. They were right at where we docked, and they're so used to doing it that I wasn't really nervous, but it was still kind of like, boy, I just hope everything's still together. And fortunately, it all worked out. But it's just one more thing you got to worry about. So,
all right, real quick for a wrap up, favorite way to prepare or eat salmon?
Depends on the type. So if it's a king, I'll typically grill it or smoke it, especially if it's later after July. Springtime, coho is tough to beat. That's my favorite. Usually bake it in the oven, so I'll skin it and then bake it.
I've always been a steelhead fan myself.
Those are good too.
Very good.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks again, Nick Van Gompel. He's one of the big kayak anglers, won the Salmon-a-rama, and as mentioned, the Great Lakes Kayak Series has a big event coming up in Manitowoc here in September. Dates, we'll have more of that up on our socials. You want to connect at On the Tailgate. Thanks again, Nick.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the time, guys.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate it. And speaking of fish and cooking and eating, thank you, Tasker, for sending over the little article here you found in the Meat Eater talking about pairing beers with fish, which I thought there's only one standard answer to that of Miller Lite goes with a fish fry, right?
For the most part, yeah. The first thing that drew me to this was that, they've got this carving board here, what looks like a charcuterie board with, a fish that just got pieced apart. And there's a Modelo in the background. I was like, you know what? That looks like a spread that Ritter would have out there.
Is it the smoked fish or the Modelo that looks like it would be my thing?
The Modelo.
Yeah, totally. Más cerveza. They say here fried fish and lager, which again is your Miller Lite, things like that. I strongly say my favorite lager, not even that. I'm going to go, well, okay, realistically, Ham's go-to. It's like the best, cheap, whatever. But the Great Lakes lager made by Bell's Brewery in Michigan is phenomenal. And anything that puts Great Lakes on the can and is like all about the outdoors, I'm all about that. So that would be like my personal goes great with a fish fry, Great Lakes lager.
Yeah. And I think that it's hard to say though sometimes, because doesn't it come down to how you're preparing the fish too for what you want to pair with it? If you're doing, a good old fashioned fish fry where it's the breading and everything, then you want to do something different. But if it's a baked or if it's like poached fish or whatever, you might want to do something especially even lighter than that.
Well, that's right.
I know we've talked about a couple different things we're gonna do up in Canada, but when you do fish fry, are you just like your regular batter? I know your wife is gluten free, right?
Yep.
So you do something different. So are you a cornmeal then?
Yeah, it's real cornmeal based. Cornmeal and cornstarch essentially is like the main component of what we do. I'm not like a beer batter. I don't like a thick batter. I just like a light coating, essentially.
Okay.
So it's a lot of that. It's basically cornmeal, cornstarch, and Tony Chachereau. There, I gave away the secret.
Yeah.
I mean, I did. It's actually a video that's on my YouTube channel of exactly how I do it and do it gluten free, and that's essentially what it is. They say you mentioned doing baked fish. Ales, your standard or herby or spicier ales, I think of like Belgian ales. We'll go to the baked fish. Raw fish with a wheat beer. So your, German wheat beers, things like that.
Interesting.
Stouts with chowders is an interesting, you think about cream-based, stouty. I'll go with that. And porters with smoked fish, which to me, stouts, porters, they're the exact same thing. The interchanging of that. Yeah, that sounds good to me.
God, I mean, how stereotypical is this? The one line that I'm reading from catfish po' boys in a Budweiser, totally the South,
but
to
that's
fish
so
tacos
wrong.
in a Corona. I mean, come on.
It's like, no, to me, if you're having a po' boy, okay, and you know me, I get very particular with my po' boys. Do not say a po' boy sandwich because a po' boy is a po' boy. All right, that is one thing that bothers me. To me, a po' boy's got to be within a beat of boot. And boot can only be gotten in the state of Louisiana. It's their version of Spotted Cow, essentially. Beta makes this one beer. It's only sold in the state of Louisiana. I don't know what it is about it. Maybe it's because I can only get it in Louisiana that I love it so much like why people love Spotted Cow here so much. Because if you're not from here and you can only get it here, you like it more. I will argue, like, forever, Spotted Cow is not the best beer that New Glarus makes. They have far better beers that they make. To me, Spotted Cow is actually probably the bottom of what New Glarus makes. But I digress. A boot with a po' boy is, that's where it's at for me. And it's got to be eaten on the street. Got to be a po' boy on the street with a boot in the city of New Orleans.
Okay. All right. So my only beef that I have with this whole article is the last part. I think it's one of the last parts, or right in the middle there, where it says chowders and stouts.
Yeah.
My God, I would be in a coma after that.
That's what I'm saying.
A rich, hearty stout. Or a rich hearty chowder.
That's what's like creamy and
cream based, and then you drink a stout on top of that. You might as well just go right to bed after that.
Yeah, night. But
yeah, there's just no way.
Bad fish with IPAs. I saw they also put in there. To me, actually, an IPA goes really good with fried fish too. Good fish fry with like.
I think so too. That would be my go-to. I mean, I love a good IPA.
Actually, one of my favorite beers. When we're gonna be up in Canada next week debating bringing it, that I've always brought in the past was All Day IPA. Founders All Day IPA.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a session one. It's only like 4%, so like it's super hoppy, but I can suck down a couple of them and like not be, falling on my can after a long day on the water. But,
yeah.
Are you ready to go?
I fell in love with this Kona Brewing beer, the Fire Rock Pale Ale.
Oh, okay.
For the longest time, I mean, I still think that that's just one of my all-time favorite beers. It's not super. It doesn't have that big floral bite to it. I just think they're so smooth. When we did our honeymoon in Hawaii, the Kona Brewery was the first and our last stop coming in and out of the island. Sherry had to drive the rental car back to the airport. I'm like, I'm drinking all of these. I have to. I mean, we're here.
I love it.
So I love that though. And I totally agree with that. I feel like a pale ale and IPA can, for the most part, go with a lot of things. I would say that it would probably go best with a nice thick beer batter though.
Okay. Yeah.
So my tip for doing beer batter is that if you are worried about getting a nice fluffy kind of a bite to it, I always do, and I do this for pancakes too, so that they're nice and fluffy, is just doing club soda instead of water. Huge difference.
Club soda is a big one I've heard of, and some people use vodka as well. Because the vodka heats, the alcohols evaporate, and that also causes more of that puffing.
Interesting.
So
I've never heard that.
As the alcohol would burn off or disperse, it can help cause that puffing, much like the club soda. I mean, club soda, I would recommend using that before vodka, but Vodka can be like in tempuras, like really key to a good tempura would be vodka in the batter.
Yeah.
So we tan in a little bit. We're up in Canada next weekend fishing, which we'll have a full recap talking a lot about that experience at Ballard's. And there'll be a lot of stuff that will be showing up on our socials from there. If you want to follow along On the Tailgate, I'm at The Real Ritter at Wisco Bow Hunting. But while we're going to be gone as well, or right when we come back, I should say, Waterfowl Hunters Expo, don't forget that's going on at the Sunnyview Expo Center in Oshkosh. Last year they brought it back. This is basically what used to be the Ducks Unlimited Great Outdoors Festival that rolled for a couple years, was like a staple of my summer. I always loved it, and then it went away, and so glad to have it, come back between Wisconsin DNR and a bunch of organizations like Vortex and Federal that all got on board to kind of put this on. Wisconsin Waterfowlers Association, huge behind it. So if you're a waterfowler, this to me is like the perfect event because it falls smack dab days before the waterfowl season kicks off, which to me is the perfect time to have it because it's the perfect time to just get jacked up and get ready to go for early teal or for early September goose hunting, which I think our buddy John Resnick is, he does some duck hunting stuff and is going to be jacked up and ready to go for that. I'm still obviously in full on fishing mode and probably not going to think about putting rods down until maybe opening day of bow season for that only.
I think I have like 10 days left in my fishing career for the year, so I'm like, as soon as we get back from Canada, I'll be completely committed to shooting my bow all the time. The one thing I wanted to mention too, with this being Saturday, Monday and Tuesday is the statewide doe tag releases depending on your county. So make sure to check the DNR website for which day, either Monday or Tuesday, the extra allocation of doe permits are released for your specific county.
I remember last year, didn't you do the wait in line at Fleet Farm to try and get the extra tags?
Yeah, because my dad, he's such a clown. He doesn't use a computer, so he's like, oh, we got to go there. So he's like number 485 in line, and there's 1,000 people at Fleet Farm in the Falls. And I just waited in the queue because I remember, weren't you in the queue number 28,000 or something ridiculous?
Yeah, I jumped in just to see what the queue was and what was going on with it, but it was like a totally random thing of how they worked you in and around the queue.
Yeah, because I think I was maybe 2,500 or something. I got in pretty early, so it wasn't too bad. It still took a third of the time of actually being in the store. So this year we're going to just set up 2 computers, get my dad a DNR login, and we'll be all right. It'll be much easier that way.
Best way to do it. So, all right, that's where we're going to wrap it up. Look forward to it. Next time we'll be talking Canada or something. We'll be talking all kinds of stuff. So check back with us On the Tailgate on the socials. Again, thanks to friends at Buck Rub Outfitters. So always, being a sponsor and helping kind of put this whole thing on. And of course, you've been out there shooting, getting tuned in, ready to go. We're going to hear about Wags and his brand new toy he got from Buck Rub next week on the show. So for Tasker, I'm Ritter. We'll catch you on the next one. This is Tailgate Talk.